Okay, so we already started this chapter. I'm not going to start from the beginning again. I just want to show you that there's the explanation of the physical manifestations. If you go back to the previous chapter, Kardec spends time to bring the evidences that the phenomena are being observed with the turning tables, with the movement of inanimate objects without any apparent uh, force behind it. And more important, providing intelligent responses, moving in a way that it's only something with intelligence behind could do it, meaning that if the table leftate, they could do more than that. They could follow a command, leftate towards the window, and the table would levitate towards the window. Again, just an example. And then with the formation of words, and then answering questions of 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 things that most people present in that room at that moment did not know the answers. After tremendous amounts of investigation, was reached the conclusion that there was an intelligence behind. So the previous chapter of this book was not about intelligence phenomena, was about physical phenomena, bringing the evidence that behind the physical phenomena, there is an intelligence in command. There is an intelligence that is guiding the inanimate matter to behave in one way or another. And now in this chapter, Kardec will bring the explanations of those physical manifestations. Now we are convinced that there is an intelligence behind. But we don't see anything, at least through our eyes, that is making those tables move, that is making those things levitate or follow directions of going from point A to point B, doing this and doing that. How does it happen? Right? And we went to many questions, because I had a set of questions when they deal with the movement and suspensions and the noises and all those things. How does spirit will make noise? Does it has a throat of its own that is able to create vocal sounds? Those are all very important questions that need to be answered for us to have a integral faith that indeed it comes from the spirits, and that indeed the spirits are actually doing all this, but how, right? So St. Louis answered many questions, and we start on item 74. We're not going to go through all of them, right? I don't think we have the time. If anyone that was not here last week wanted to review, I think it's a good idea. I did have to reveal it, and I did, right? You stopped on we completed 10 last week, question 10. But 9 is of significance for us to understand all the answers that come following 9. And there was a question that was placed on this item 9 that we did not have time to go over. So we're going to start reading on 9. And again, these are questions placed by Kardec, and the answers come from St. Louis. That is the spirit that was assisting Kardec directly on the codification, right? So we start with number 9. Somebody read for us. That's all right. Can you read?
Yes, of course. Number 9. Do spirits lift tables using their arms, which have become solidified somehow? The answer to that question will not yet tell you what you want to know. When a table moves underneath your hands, it is because the spirit who has been evoked has taken enough of the universal fluid to infuse the table with artificial life. Having prepared the table in this way, the spirit attracts it and moves it under the influence of its own fluid, which it emits by exerting its own will. When the object that it wants to move is too heavy for it, it asks for the help of other spirits who possess similar characteristics. Because of its ethereal nature, the spirit in and of itself cannot act upon dense matter without some kind of intermediary, that is, without the link that connects it to matter. This link is what you call the perispirit, and it provides the key to all physical spirit phenomena. I believe I have explained the matter clearly enough to have made myself understood. We would call attention to the sentence. The answer to that question will not yet tell you what you want to know. This spirit understood perfectly well that all the preceding questions had the sole purpose of leading up to question 9. He was referring to our thought, wherein we had in fact anticipated a different response, that is, one that would confirm our own idea about the way spirits move tables.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So if you move back to the answer to that question will not yet tell what you want to know. And Kardec makes a comment over here that the spirit had already read Kardec's thought and understood that question 9, was just a prelude for what they really want to know. And that's how you start answering. Well, I'm going to give an answer, but there is not going to answer what we really want to know. Because the spirit already anticipate what Kardec really wants to ask. But I use the same statement. The answer to the question will not yet tell you what you want to know. And that is in relation to the question that was placed last week. We still don't really know how the mechanism of the spirit using the fluids at its disposal to make dense matter move. I had checked quite a few books to see if there is a question, see how does it act? Is that, do we understand the methodology of how the spirits utilize the fluids to make those, to interact with dense matter and make them move. The specifics, we do not know yet, okay? If you go to the domain of mediumship, there is one chapter. There is a chapter called Physical Phenomena, Physical Effect Phenomena, but it's dealing primarily with spiritual treatment. And it's dealing with a more eloquent type of physical phenomena in which there is when is required, a much more eloquent type of medium and type of individuals around that room to make that phenomena take place. And that phenomena of materialization, and specifically in this case in the book, the materialization of a spiritual doctor that will utilize the fluids associated to perform treatment of the physical body of one other patient. This is extremely complex. It requires tremendous amount of discipline, not only of the medium, but everyone in there. So it's a more eloquent type of physical phenomenon. And in that chapter, Aulus is the mentor of André Luiz. And when it comes to physical phenomena, I'm saying this to give a kind of understanding, because the question that was placed and is placed today also is, why you don't see those things anymore? I would be curious to see those things. I am very curious to see those things. I'd like to see a piano floating and playing by itself. It happens spontaneously. We know cases that have spontaneous. I have never witnessed. I'd love to witness a treatment, a surgery. But I have not, and I do have the curiosity. I don't think it's wrong to have that curiosity. I think it's good. I think curiosity very often is mother of development of the intelligence. But Aulus puts a very strong message regarding the physical phenomenon. He says, and I quote, "Bear in mind that I accompany you here to help the sick, although many attempts of materialization of forces from our plane have been done on Earth. In general, they are marked by regrettable attitudes of our incarnate brothers and sisters. According to our view, only the sick justify efforts of this type unless it is for dignified and respectable scientific work which will benefit all humankind." And I brought this up because of the question. I want to see it. Well, I want to see too. But since the event of the physical phenomena very commonly happened first in the US and then moved to Europe, and it was there like a epidemic everywhere there was physical phenomena happening, it disappeared for a reason. Now we have the understanding of the phenomena. Now we have the intelligence phenomena that produces books to educate us morally, and that is the goal of the enlightened spirits. And there is two cases of physical phenomena that the higher spirits are still engaged with, and they find it to be useful to us in case of treatment of the sick, which I'm saying for myself here now, I believe it happens a lot more than we are able to know. I think there are cases of disease throughout this world in which our medicine does not have means of treat, or even if there is means of, there is parts of the world that medicine does not reach, and would expect those patients to die because of lack of available treatment, and somehow they end up being cured. And you can call it whatever you call it, a miracle, is whatever. Personally, I believe there's a lot of spiritual treatment happening right in front of our eyes, and we have no idea of it. But then again, it's my opinion. I have no evidence of it, okay? And outside of the sick, I think it's very important, it says, for dignified and respectable scientific work which will benefit all humankind. Therefore, not an instrument to fulfill a curiosity, although we have it, and I think it's healthy. We should be rather concerned with things of different nature. So physical phenomena is not being used that much anymore, at least by the enlightened spirits, according to Aulus. That is the spirit who was coordinating the studies with André Luiz in the book in the domain of mediumship. And when it comes to the question itself, now to answer the question using the same book. Now, this again is a more eloquent kind of physical phenomena, okay? to perform materialization of a spiritual doctor to assist the sick in this particular book. But the explanation is pretty much the same for all when it comes to the fluids. And Aulus explained to André Luiz in the book that these fluids, you can divide them in three parts. And they say that there we have the light plastic material that is needed for materialization. Briefly, we can divide it into three essential elements, and these are the part that is important. A fluids, representing the superior and subtle forces from our sphere, from the spiritual world. B fluids, defining the resources of the medium and assisting him. So what this medium has to offer, that now we know there is the ectoplasm. And the C fluid, consisting of energies from nature. Based on this explanation from Aulus, we have the fluid that the spirits use to perform the phenomena is the sum of different energies. One that comes from the spiritual world, that the spirits process themselves. The higher spirits they have a more eloquent type, and we're going to discuss that later. The medium who is able to provide what know is called ectoplasm. And they can also use elements of fluids that derive from nature. The way that will happen is that the spirit, using its own fluid, the fluid A, combined with fluid, with what the medium has to offer, called ectoplasm, will coat, you cover, and to a certain degree permeate those dense matter, because dense matter is not dense, right? The spirits can go through matter as we go through air, right? So they can permeate those fluids into the dense matter that they seek to utilize, play the piano, to levitate a table, whatever. So we'll cover that table, allow that fluid, the combination of fluids, permeate that object, that table, and using the power of the mind, they can dictate orders that those fluids will follow. So they don't have big, strong arms that each one hold one foot of the table, four of them, 1, 2, 3, lift up. That's not the way it happens. It's not a physical work per se, but it's a work of the mind. That spirit can render that inanimate object temporarily animated by those fluids that are acting under the command of the spirit's desire, the spirit's mind. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Because that's important to understand this, right? So it's almost, if you say that the combination of those fluids, what the meter can offer, the ectoplasm, in association with what the spirits bring, what those fluids that spirit have on his own is almost like an extension of the mind of the spirit. And the ectoplasm is what allows the spirit to associate with the dense matter. Last month I explained that if you use the example of saponification, right? Water and oil does not mix. If you put your hand on a jar of oil, you can wash your hand with water as much as you want. The oil will not come out because water and oil does not like one another. They repel one another. What do? We use an element that you allow that water and oil to get together, and that is soap. So you use soap. And a chemical called saponification makes water and oil friendly, and now you can remove the soap from your hand because now it's friendly with water, and when you rinse, the oil goes away from your hand together with the water because now they are friends, right? We can use that as an analogy. The ectoplasm is the substance that will make the dense matter friend with the energies of the spirit, the fluid A that Aulus calls over here, right? And that fluid that comes from the spirit obeys the desire, the mind of the spirit. So the spirit send a desire of the table to lift, the table will lift. Of course, that's temporary. The ectoplasm does not have a long half-life, may not be strong enough, not even to do much of what the spirit wants to do. In this book here, we see Kardec using the word fluid substances because the term ectoplasm was first used by Charles Richet and was not until 1850. No, I'm sorry, 1890. I forgot the date. I put the date over there. Oh, yeah, I have that date here. Was 1894. The Charles Richet, who was a scientist, was doing a lot of work, a lot of research on that, and came out with the term ectoplasm, referring to the substance that some spirits can emanate from, primarily to the orifices of their body, especially the orifices, primarily the orifices of the face, sometimes from the umbilical. It can be put out even by the pores, but most commonly by the facial orifices. It will have according to one book that I rely a lot and I trust a lot, which is the theory of mediumship of Zimmerman. It may vary in color, it may vary for those who are able to see, sometimes it's visible by everyone in the room, but most of them have a opaque white appearance, fluidic, like smoke kind of coming out from the mouth, the nose, the ears of the medium who's able to provide it. Not always visible, most of the time not visible, but sometimes they can also be seen by our physical eyes. And again, very important, the combination of those fluids, what the spirits bring, what the medium offers, and if necessary, in some cases, utilize fluids that come from nature, they are able to make inanimate objects perform things as if they are not unalive, but have some degree of intelligence. And the intelligence, of course, is the spirit who is in reality performing the phenomena. Okay, questions, comment? Okay. And
Okay.
Uh,
Number
did you answer the question from Wayne from last month?
yes,
I don't know.
and the answer was in the comment that we don't know exactly the methodology, how it happens.
Okay.
Yeah, but we know that it's by utilizing those fluids, and that's why I went back with fluid A, B, and C to make them understand that the object, an animate object, will follow commands from the spirit because it is receiving fluids from that spirit, and that fluid from that spirit is almost like an extension of the mind of the spirit, the same way that our hands and fingers is pretty much an extension of our brain, right? What we think. Because the brain cannot do anything, but it can command the hands to do things.
Okay, Wayne?
Yes, I have another question. If you had a wooden table, would this be an accurate analogy? If you had a wooden table and you coated it with some kind of iron metal, and which is the fluids going around a dense object, and the analogy, and then you utilize magnetism to actually lift the metal coating that surrounds the table, and you're not really lifting the table. You're lifting the table encapsulated in this magnetic coating, which can be acted upon by the magnets, which is an invisible force. Is that sort of like an analogy of it?
That's a very good analogy. I just make a parenthesis that it's not like it is a magnet, right? If it's attracting metal, it's a magnet. But it's not the magnetism of mesmerism, right? It's a different thing, right?
Right.
Okay, so yeah, the analogy is perfect. Now, there is an intelligence behind that magnet, right? Otherwise, that magnet would not be able to move that table that is now coated with magnetic elements to answer intelligent questions. Say, move to the right, go towards the table, go towards the window, right? There has to be an intelligence force behind that magnet that will command the magnet to lead that table towards the window, towards the door, to flip on upside down, whatever, right? And so even in that very good analogy that it created, you have to imagine there is an intelligence behind.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Number 10?
Mhm.
Okay. Are the spirits whom it calls upon to help of a less evolved nature? Are they under its orders? They are almost always its equals and come spontaneously.
Okay. In the previous answer, this apart from the spirit's answer saying that if the spirit is not able to perform the whole thing on its own, it calls for help. Good. Now, can I ask, who is the help that we can call? Is someone more evolved or less evolved? How is that? And so it's almost always equal and comes spontaneously. In the spiritual world, you know that the division in hierarchy is a little bit more stricter than here, right? Spirits of certain level of progress, and we deal here mostly of moral progress, vibrates in one area, so to say, and in that way, all those spirits at the same level are there. And when a spirit is gonna call for another one, who's gonna hear it? That here as analogy, of course. Those who are vibrated around the same area, right? If I scream right here now, it's those who are in my house will be able to come to see what I need. Right? If I scream very loud, maybe the neighbors, but someone in Manhattan is very unlikely to come, right? So it's obvious that the spirits they have vibrated the same areas, the ones who come in to assist, because they are the ones who can receive those calls at much easier. So very often the spirits are about the same level of evolved nature. They over here. And very often they're gonna come without need to be calling. You know, the same way that while you're doing something in your home, there's a lot of people, somebody looks, oh, look like you need help with lifting the piano. I don't think you'll be able to lift that piano by yourself. They come in spontaneous, come in and help. Right? And again, not talking about physical force, okay? I'm going to deal with spirituality. For me to lift the piano, yes, pure physical force, which I don't have. But in case of the spirits, you're not talking about the physical force of the mind. Okay? That is a simple one. 11.
Okay. Are all spirits able to produce phenomena of this kind? The spirits who produce them are always of a less evolved nature that is not yet entirely free of material influences.
This is very important. We're going to talk a little bit more about the density of the very spirit. And again, I like to make another parents that the words that we use, density, are words that we borrow from our physical sciences because you don't have any other words. And perhaps this is the appropriate word. Eventually you find out if it is or not. But I wanted to keep in mind that when you use words like density, and many words that we have a definition in our physical sciences, is because we don't have anything better to use. And the spirits also use the same words because again they have to use what we have in order to teach us. They have to make analogy of the things that make sense to us, right? So spirits were more evolved, and I think highly evolved. The perispirit is very spiritualized, so to say. It doesn't carry that much matter as we would imagine be necessary to be able to associate with more dense things that pertains to the physical world, like ectoplasm. We have to understand that ectoplasm being basically a byproduct of a physical phenomena, of biological, biochemical phenomena, is something quite dense, something that belongs to the physical world purely, right? Therefore, the spirits are with such a evolved perispirit, the perispirit are not able to associate with such a dense matter such as ectoplasm. So what will they do? They will bring spirits who are able to do so. So for the question, if all spirits can produce it, no. Of course, there is the know-how, and having the know-how, they have to have the ability to make that association with more dense matter. And the spirits who produce those kind of phenomena are the spirits, perhaps, I don't know, like us now, no, not completely ignorant, but not enlightened enough to have a more sublime perispirit. Somewhat in the middle, but with a good intention to help and produce phenomena that will help humanity. You can be like, the bricklayer in a building. I have the good intention when I get my salary, but I don't have still the skills of the architect who developed the plan, or the civil engineering who make the more work on the field possible. All that I can do for now is lay bricks, and I'll do my best, doing the best work that I can, right? So that may not have the physical power to carry bricks, or perhaps it has in our physical world, but that time will be better utilized doing other things. So you'll have the laying of bricks for those who are able to do a good job laying those bricks. Well,
Okay. We can understand that highly evolved spirits do not concern themselves with matters that are well below them, but we would like to know if they would have the ability to do so if they wanted to, since they are more dematerialized. They possess mental power as the others possess physical power. When they have need of the latter, they employ those who have it. Haven't we already stated that they use lower order spirits in the same way that you employ porters? We have already stated that the density of the perispirit, if one may say so, varies according to the nature of the various worlds. It also seems to vary on the same world according to different individuals. In morally advanced spirits, it is subtler and comes close to the perispirit of high order entities. On the other hand, in low order spirits, it is closer to matter. And this is what causes the persistence of the illusions of earthly life in such spirits who think and act as if they were still physically alive, possessing the same desires, and we could almost say the same sensuality. This density of the perispirit, which lends it a great affinity to matter, is what enables low-order spirits to be more skillful at physical manifestations. It is similar to why a refined person with a fragile and delicate body and who is used to intellectual endeavors cannot lift heavy loads like a porter can. The matter of his or her body is somewhat less compact. The organs are less resilient and the neural fluid is less intense. The perispirit is for the spirit what the body is for the individual. Its density results from the less purified nature of the spirit. Hence, this density replaces muscular strength. That is, it gives a greater power over the fluid needed for this type of manifestation than a spirit of a more ethereal nature possesses. If a more evolved spirit wants to produce such effects, it does what frail persons among us would do. It employs the spirit of the trait.
thank you.
You're welcome.
So here comes the word of density. That density is very important to understand. And by density, you can only understand as the more evolved you are, the closer you are to spirituality, and the less evolved we are, the closer we are to physical world. And I think it's important to remind everyone that when I say more or less involved, we are not talking about being good or bad, being evil or not, okay? Just talk about being less evolved. You know, just imagine an average grader in comparison to a PhD. He may be a lovely, wonderful grader, but does not have, in general, the intellectual abilities of the PhD in relation to our physical existence, of course, right? Now it's an old spirit, talking about physical existence here purely. And Kardec taught something that we're studying right now in the Spirit's book is the reincarnation of spirits, or spirits who will reincarnate in different worlds, and upon having the necessity or the possibility of reincarnating in a different world, its perispirit will have to draw the elements of that specific world. Brown used just last Thursday, you know, if the spirit's going to reincarnate, have a physical body, and again, the word physical here has to be used very carefully, that is comparable with the physical life of those planets. So if it's a planet made of gas, it will have to have a constitution that is quite different of a solid planet like Earth. If there is a need for that spirit to have some kind of, how is it, digestive system, so to say, to have to feed on something, it will have to be on a planet that provides that kind of nutrients for that spirit. If a spirit's more evolved, does not need a digestive system anymore, it is able to gather nutrients from breathing, from respiration, you're not even gonna have a digestive system. No, that's one way that we can measure the progress of the spirit is the question. Does it perispirit have a digestive system? It does. It's still pretty dumb like us here. Still have to destroy life in order to survive. And by life, I mean vegetables and everything else. We would imagine that spirits who does not need the digestive system anymore to have a much more spiritualized perispirit, that will make it almost impossible to associate with dense matter like ectoplasm. So they will resort to bring spirits who are able to make that connection, and they will utilize those spirits. It's an opportunity of teaching. It's an opportunity of getting those spirits involved in work, and the definition of work is an useful activity, right? Would allow that spirit also to progress. So in order to perform those things, the higher order spirits are not going to be able to do, period. They already know. If a very low evolved spirit, they cannot associate with very dense matter like ectoplasm, but they can use the intelligence and help or offer the opportunity of level of the spirit to associate with that matter and produce things. Again, can use an architect or civil engineer may be on a wheelchair, may have a spine injury and it's not able to use the arms and legs, but it still has the powerful mind and it's able to be an engineer, to be an architect, but it cannot lay bricks. So we will use those who are able to lay bricks, that have the physical power, but lack the intellectual power to design the building and so forth and so on. Capable of doing so, but at that moment they are not, okay? And that is an example of how everybody's indispensable and important, even in the spiritual world. There is a placement for everyone according to our talents. That's why, the master gave 5 talents to one, 2 to the other, 1 to the other one, because that's what each one of them could manage, right? Let me see what else we have here. I think I covered everything. Any questions there?
I think it's important also to extend this concept to, even to communication from high order spirits, right? For them to associate with a medium that is in the physical world and give a communication, is much easier for them to bring an intermediary also, so a spirit that can send the message, right? Of course, they can and they will communicate directly, but in many cases it's not necessary. So it's important for us when we keep seeing messages from so-called much more evolved spirits coming regularly. We need to ask ourselves: is this really a high order spirit, or is this some sort of mystification or something like that, right?
Yeah, I think that's very important also. Although not to be considered physical phenomenon, more of intelligent phenomenon, but even so, we could imagine that a spirit at the magnitude of, say, of Jesus Christ to come and provide communication using the perispirit of one of us may be a little bit complicated. Is it possible? Of course it's possible. I'm sure that Jesus Christ will lower himself as much as he can to reach us, but we have to have a minimum to bring ourselves up also to meet him, not halfway, but 1/100th of the way, because it's as high as we can go, it's 1/100th, and then Jesus will go do. But you have to have that to offer, right? You just discussed that in the book that we read every Monday as well, in the chapter when Jesus asked, how many breads do you have? And discussion of Emmanuel is that you have to have something to be multiplied. You can't, everything that multiplied by 0 is what? It's 0, right? You have to have something to bring to the table, even if it's very mean. So is it possible that Jesus Christ may give a communication? Yes, it's possible. But then the question, what is the medium who can give that 1/100th to reach himself up where he can meet Jesus? When Jesus asks, what do you bring to the table? How many breads do you have? What do you have to offer? So you have to be some kind of careful in accepting, taking all those messages that come from Jesus Christ, they come from Mary, Mother of Jesus, or all those high order spirits. That, I'm not saying that the spirit, that the medium is being evil, is lying, but that perhaps there are other spirits making use of the fragility of that medium and making believe that is actually able to do such a thing. When in reality, I would imagine very few of us are able to have that 1/100th to offer and have that communication take place. Again, I'm not saying possible, that's a word that I try not to use, but will bring a high suspicion, and we have to be very careful. At a minimum, be very careful.
Mhm.
Yeah, Zaboni.
I've heard about mediums performing what they refer to as spiritual surgeries. I'm wondering if physical phenomena is the mechanism behind it.
Yes, 100%. It's a physical phenomena, a very often phenomena that requires a materialization. And in the book that I read at the beginning of the study, the domain of leadership, what they are trying to perform would be a spiritual surgery. They were not able to do it because the participants in the room did not have the proper mindset, and would place the medium at a very high risk of performance. So they have to abort. But this is another book that's very interesting. I'm sorry even to mention because it's not translated to English. It's just going to make you more curious. It's called the A Face Oculta da Medicina. It's the occult face of medicine. And there's a doctor who is a medical doctor in Brazil Paulo César Frutuoso, who also is an spiritist and who also participate in spiritual surgeries. And in that book, it explains very well the whole process, how it happens. It's purely a physical phenomena, utilizing ectoplasm, utilizing a medium, and the spiritual doctor will materialize and perform the procedure. Now, the procedure is done at the perispiritual level, right? So the medium, the patient not gonna have an incision on his physical body, but very often we'll have all the symptoms of a post-operative physical procedure, and will require being treated as a post-operative patient as well. But it's purely a physical phenomenon.
Okay, thank you.
But that's one that I said it is extremely eloquent. It's not as simple as lifting a table. It's much more complex and requires a much higher degree of discipline, not only of the medium, but all the participants involved in that session.
Elmo, may I ask a question? This is Carol.
Go ahead, Carol.
Oh, sure. Yes. Could the possibility of global weather patterns or physical changes in the weather be a physical manifestation which are created by the combination of the fluids of the spirits, the mediums, and the fluids of nature?
Again, I'm not going to use the word impossible because I think it's one of the forbidden words in my dictionary. But I don't think so. I think all the weather phenomena can and are explained by laws of thermodynamics, laws of physics in our physical world. Would the spirits have any participate in it? It could, but I would not use it to explain the weather phenomena that you experience. Those can be answered by our physical sciences. What I will direct more the attention is the movement of us incarnate spirits transiting those areas, exposing ourselves to those physical activities, those weather activities. You know, why people are born and live their entire lives in areas of high risk, or the other people born in areas where there is no risk. Why people live in areas of absolute no risk decides to travel to areas of high risk during the season of high risk. That I could is more likely to have, and I do believe have the participation of spirits and has a more palpable spirituality associated with the phenomena itself. Our science explains everything, and I would not use spirituality in order to explain those phenomena.
But perhaps maybe on an individual level, someone who is perhaps a shaman who is considered a rainmaker, would that be a little bit more of the possibility that it could be a physical manifestation?
Again, I'm not going to say it is impossible, no, but I would not use spirituality to explain the rain in any situation.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
We know that there are.
I would explain that perhaps those who needs to be in an area with this kind of phenomena will be there at the time where the phenomenon is likely to happen, and then it may or may not happen.
Thank you, Elmo.
Okay.
I have a comment. I think just reading this and understanding how hard this idea of more evolved spirits having an interaction with, us or our plane. Just thinking about, we know that among us there are several spirits that are more evolved, right? And I think that process of reincarnation for spirits that elect to come back to help us, where they are in a more settled nature. And I know there's a whole, theory about how long it took Jesus to kind of, descend and to reincarnate. But it's interesting, as I read this, I just see that that process becomes a lot more complicated. As much as we like to have spirits more evolved, and we need them, right, to kind of guide us and help us with science discoveries and all that. But it's just it's a more complex system that needs to come into place for them to be able to come back. And I think this comment sort of kind of reinforced that in my mind.
Yes, and that is the reason that we have to educate ourselves, right? In order, when we are exposed to these kinds of topics, we can have a means of at least have a degree of suspicion and rejecting 10 truth before you accept one lie, right? We need to have this in our bag in order to utilize everything to be wiser of what we'll take, what we accept, and what we don't. I'd like to make a comment over here that I'm not saying none of those things are impossible, okay? I'm not saying that no one will ever receive a message from Mother of Jesus. It's possible. But you have to have a degree of suspicion and a high means to investigate it properly before we take it. And I'm also not saying that I completely say that no, individuals can get together with the power of their mind, be able to anticipate perhaps a weather phenomenon or something like that. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but I'm saying that I refuse to put spirituality in matters that are spiritually physical, rain, storms, earthquakes, all those things. We have an explanation ourselves, and I think that's how we should utilize. But not saying that it's impossible to have a spiritual cooperation, perhaps a Genesis. Because again, impossible is a very dangerous word for me. But it is equally important, dangerous to me, to put spirituality as the genesis just about everything that happens.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's important to remember that we learn from the spirits, and there are spirits associated with everything that happens, right, in nature. But associated doesn't mean that they are making things happen. They are associated. It's a work that they do in terms of their spiritual involvement. Sometimes, very primitive spirits that are associated with phenomena of nature. And that's the origin of what you see some people that see gnomes and other spirits in the forest, right? These are spirits that are associated with nature, and primitive spirits that are there under the guidance of or evolved spirits. Again, Earth was created. Jesus has been taking care of Earth since the beginning, and of course, he has spirits that work with him in producing the development of the planet. But yes, as Elmo said, no, there is no spirits responsible for the hurricane. It's you'll be more likely that it's a result of a natural phenomenon as explained by science. But it's important to remember that there are spirits associated with everything.
And anything that happens has to follow natural laws.
Yes.
So storms and things follow the natural laws of thermodynamics, of movements of water, movements of this and that, and the complexity of all those phenomena. And for Ebony, if we're interested in the domain of mediumship, is the very the very last chapter deals with spiritual surgery. And in the books, I'm saying those are translated to English. Missionaries of the Light also, there is the one chapter they deal with materialization that perhaps gives some answers into the spiritual surgeries a little bit more, okay?
Okay, thank you, Elmo.
Sure. All right, you do 13 now?
Okay. If we correctly understand what you have said, the vital principle lies in the universal fluid. The spirit draws a semi-material envelope that comprises its perispirit from this fluid, and it is through this fluid that it acts upon inert matter. Is this so? Yes, it means that it animates matter with a sort of artificial life. Matter becomes infused with animal life. The table that moves under your hands is alive with animal-like life and obeys the intelligent being itself. The spirit itself does not push the table as if it was some kind of physical load. And when the table rises into the air, the spirit is not lifting it with its arms. Instead, the animated table obeys the impulse given to it by the spirit.
So right now, we are spirits that in our level of more intellectual progress makes us more comparable with the kind of life that the planet Earth offers. We still have the need to procreate via sex. We still have the need to kill living things in order to survive. We need to eat an apple. We need to eat a corn. No, at one point you need to kill an animal. Today that's not the case anymore, but we still have a requirement for proteins. And when we are attracted to a planet like Earth, because he is where we belong, once we get over here, we, the spirit, will figure out what is it that our physical body will need, and will absorb, so to say, borrowing a word again, elements from the atmosphere of the planet Earth to form a perispirit that will be able to produce a physical body that is adapted to life on the planet Earth. Because the perispirit is the organized model of the physical body. So far, so good?
Yes.
And that's what Kardec's telling here us now. And that's what we covered, or we are covering right now in the Spirit's book. There is an essence of the perispirit also that is always there with the Spirit. So that's more constant. Other parts of the perispirit is not constant. It's variable and will vary in accordance with the worlds where you're going to inhabit. Again, solid planets versus gaseous, with other words, or gas planets, right? Have to be a different thing. Requirement of consuming food, need a digestive system. No more need to consume food, no need a digestive system, and so forth and so on, right? The spirit will understand that requirement. The non-variable, the constant part of the perispirit will suck in, absorb the elements of that atmosphere to form physical bodies or to form the perispirit, I'm sorry, that will be able to make physical bodies adapted to the life in that world, in that planet. Does it make sense? Silence means yes. So, we are spirits that have tremendous affinity with everything in this planet. Our perispirit has tremendous affinity with everything associated with this planet. So, the spirit, let's say, as dumb as I am, when I leave this physical body behind and go back to the spiritual world, my perispirit has tremendous affinity, association with things of the planet, even the things that is dense that I cannot touch and manipulate right now because I'm discarnate, right? But if you give me something that I can use as an instrument to allow me to connect to that physical things, then I have that affinity. My perispirit has that affinity. Okay? And Kardec, in this question, try to tell us that, okay? If we correctly understand what you are said, the vital principle lies in the universal fluid. The spirit draws the same material envelope that comprises its perispirit from this fluid, or whatever is in that atmosphere that will vary from celestial body to celestial body, right? And we will form that perispirit. Now, that perispirit will have affinity to everything of that world, inclusive the ectoplasm for us here in our planet, right? That is quite dense matter, but we have that affinity. So as a discarnate spirit, having the know-how, have understood how to do it, I may be able to gather ectoplasm from a medium, associate that ectoplasm with my own fluids, and use that now combined fluids to cover a table and make the table do whatever I want to do. If I ask a table to levitate, it will levitate because it's an extension, so to say, of my mind right now. And that's how it happens. Questions, comment? Is it clear? Okay, silence means yes.
Number 14. What role does the medium play in this phenomenon? I have already said that the medium's own fluid is combined with the universal fluid accumulated by the spirit. The uniting of both the animalized and universal fluids is required in order to endow the table with life. However, you must not forget that this life is only momentary. It stops with the cessation of fluid's action, and often before the process is fully completed. As soon as the amount of fluids is no longer sufficient to animate the table.
Okay, so I think you beat on the horse enough already. The ectoplasm has a very short half-life. The mind of the spirit is for how long the spirit is engaged in the work ahead. If one or another stops, the whole thing stops. The medium can produce enough ectoplasm to reverse the rotation of Earth. If there is not a spirit to use that ectoplasm, nothing gonna happen. if the spirit has all the know-how and desire to reverse the rotation of Earth, if there is not enough ectoplasm for that to happen, it's not going to happen. So those two elements are absolutely essential for the phenomena to happen. And they will stop as soon one or another is not available any longer. Good? Okay. 15.
15. Can a spirit act without resorting to a medium? It can act without the medium being aware of it. In other words, many persons help spirits to produce certain phenomena without even suspecting it. These persons are like fountains from which spirits draw the animal fluid they need. Consequently, the conscious participation of a medium, as you know, is not always necessary, especially with spontaneous phenomenon.
This is very important when we're dealing with physical phenomena of lesser consequences, so to say, less eloquent type of phenomenon. There are plenty of mediums throughout this world that never heard of mediumship. There are plenty of mediums around this world who suffers for not knowing what they have or what they are. They have no idea. There's a lot of mediums of physical phenomena that produces tremendous amount of ectoplasm that can be used by spirits and have no idea that they do possess that potential, that they are producing those ectoplasm, and this ectoplasm is being used by spirits without they ever even knowing. So yes, can a spirit act without resorting to a medium? Yes, in the sense that the medium is not taking any participation in the phenomena, but the medium is providing the necessary fluids for the phenomena, not even knowing that they are doing it.
Mm.
Okay?
And I think the easiest way for us to understand this is just to think of the Sisters Fox, right? How everything started. There was a spirit that are using the mediumship of them to produce noises and in the house, right? They were not even, they had no idea they were mediums. They didn't even know that this existed. But the spirit used their ectoplasm to produce the physical phenomena they started all the spiritualist movement, right? If you think of that, it's very easy to accept this idea.
Yeah, and we have plenty of testimonial of individuals who have witnessed things happen around them, their own houses, phenomena happen that cannot be explained by anything else. That some of them find the spirit is sent and receive those valuable informations. What they do with it's up to them, of course. But there's a lot of people who is saying, weird things happen around me. I have no idea what it is, but it happens. And don't even have the curiosity to try to understand things with greater depth. Those are potentially could be mediums of physical phenomena who are donating necessary ectoplasm for spirits to use and perform all kinds of things that it is unimaginable to me, but people just live with them without trying to understand it. So the important thing here is that can a spirit act without resorting to a medium? Yes, in the sense that the medium does not participate, but no, in the sense that somebody has to provide those fluids. And those somebody usually mediums of physical, or are medium of physical phenomena, are mediums that produce the ectoplasm. And of course, when the medium is aware and willing, the phenomenon itself can be much enriched, and in some cases even needed, Let's say in the case of physical or of spiritual surgeries. (16)
16. Does the animated table act with intelligence? Does it think? The object itself does not think. It is like a walking stick that you might use to make an intelligent signal to someone. The vitality that animates it enables it to obey the impulse of the intelligence behind it. You should realize that the moving table does not become a spirit, and it has neither thought nor will. We frequently use a similar expression in everyday language concerning a wheel that is spinning rapidly. We say that it is animated by a rapid movement.
Is there any question on that? Because I think it's too clear. Now you know that table is a table does not carry any intelligence whatsoever. And if performs anything intelligent, it has to come from someone who possesses intelligence, and it has to be a spirit. And the spirit may be incarnate or discarnate. Period.
Okay. Number 17. What is the preponderant cause in the production of this phenomenon? The spirit itself or the fluid? The spirit is the cause and the fluid is its instrument. Both are required.
Love this answer.
Mhm.
Right? The spirit is the cause. The spirit is the thinking being. The spirit is what makes it possible in the sense that in order to be intelligent, again, to obey some kind of command, following, answering a question, the spirit, as intelligence, produces it. But the spirit needs the substance, the element that allows the spirits to interact with that inanimate dense matter. In the case could be whatever it is, a table or anything else. (18)
Okay. 18. In this case, what role does the medium's will play? To call upon the spirits and to aid them in giving impulse to the fluid. Is the medium's will always indispensable? It increases the potency, but it is not always necessary, since a movement may occur in spite of or contrary to the medium's will. Further proof for the existence of an independent cause. It is not always even necessary for the hands to come in contact with the object in order for it to move. Almost always, all that they are needed for is to provide the essential initial impulse. But after the object has been animated, it can obey the will without any physical contact. Of course, this depends on the power of the medium or the nature of the spirit involved. Moreover, even the first contact is not always needed. We have proof of this in the spontaneous movements and dislocations that no one even thought about causing.
So the only significance of the importance of this question is in regard to the touching the inanimate object in question. Because in the beginning, what Kardec observed in the sciences, that he went to observe those physical phenomena taking place, they would ask the participants most of the time to lightly put their hands over the table and concentrate, and A and B and D and so forth and so on. And this class became very important because of it. Because that's, wait a minute, you say the medium is not really necessary. You mean the medium may not even know what's happening. But don't we have to put their hands over the object and things like that? And the Spirit said, no, it's not necessary. Having the will of the medium, as I said, it will increase the potential of the communication, of the phenomena, I'm sorry. 19. to call upon the spirit, there is always an evocation, or most of the time, I'm sorry, there is not always an evocation. Most of the time in the seances, you're talking about here the seances, the organized meeting to observe these phenomena, okay? And then they will call on a specific spirit, okay? But very often it could happen spontaneously that nobody called any spirit, and the spirit start to use the ectoplasm in performing. When there is this degree of organization, of meditating, getting together, in the case of Allan Kardec and Spiritual Center, where he used the work, they would start with a prayer just the way we do. They would ask to be assisted by the higher spirits, and then they would evoke one or another spirit. They would call that spirit what they call evocation today. But is it indispensable? No, it's not indispensable, and you already covered that. But at that time, there was that idea of putting your hands lightly over the table, this and that, and the Ouija board, I believe I never did in my life, but I believe I have to put the hands over the little thing, and the spirit said, no, having the participation of the medium is always useful. Always increase the potential of a successful phenomena, but it's not always required, but it's always useful. It's always good to have it. And no, the medium does not have to be touching the object that is being used for the physical phenomena. Um, 26, I'm going to stop here now. Is there any questions? Anything that you already covered that needs to be clarified? Okay, so I think that's it for today.
Okay.
Next Sunday, it's the Q&A session, right? It's the last Sunday of the month. So bring your questions.
Okay, there are an announcement, Ron? Besides that.
No, that's it.
Yes.
That's
Well, Carol, can you do a final prayer, please?
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much, Elmo, for being our host. Thank you also, John, and thank you, Sarita, for reading, and for everyone who is here participating. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks for the opportunity to be together as brothers and sisters for our studies of the Medium's book, Chapter 4, regarding physical manifestations. Physical manifestations are created by an intelligent combination of fluids from the spirits, the medium's ectoplasm, and fluids of nature. The vital principle lies in the universal fluid and acts upon inert matter to animate it. The spirit is the cause, the medium is the instrument. Our perispirit has affinity with everything in association with planet Earth. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us today. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us, and for our loved ones, our teachers, our directors, the counselors, the mediums, the workers, and all participants. We pray for inner peace, and especially now for world peace, and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center, SGNY, and all Spiritus centers throughout the world, that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected throughout the day and throughout the night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and coworkers. May we remind ourselves now to go forth as beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service and charity, which is love in action. May peace and love prevail. So be it.